business press is probably the best way into understanding the capitalist soul. While many of the mainstream press is stuffed full of ideology, which has to make the rampant exploitation of the poor appear as noble altruism, that mask often slips in the business pages. A good example of the inhuman priorities of the financial media is this market report from CBS News in the aftermath of the death of Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez. Apparently, the oil market had little reaction to his death, with the price of crude little changed. The journalist described how Chavez invested Venezuela's oil wealth into social programs including state-run food markets, cash benefits for poor families, free health clinics and education programs. But those gains were meager compared with the spectacular construction projects the oil riches spurred in glittering Middle Eastern cities, including the world's tallest building in Dubai and plans for branches of the Louvre and Guggenheim museums in Abu Dhabi. Free health clinics and education for the poor majority is seemingly irrelevant. What is important are the tall, flashy buildings and the grand art galleries so the rich can feel important and puffed up with status. Essentially, the role of the business press is to see every story, no matter how tragic, as what does this mean for the investor? A curious language has been invented to describe actions which benefit the people rather than corporations. Resource nationalism is one which describes industry benefiting people, as shown in this piece by the Wall Street Journal about reform of oil and mining industries in Indonesia. Open for business to describe countries which privatize their assets, as shown here by the FT in this piece about Ethiopia. A more accurate term would be up for sale. The business press is also full of ideology. Economic growth is the best way to evaluate the performance of an economy. The increase in investment and economic activity is what's important. Britain's Economist magazine is, as the name may suggest, in favour of neoliberal policies and foreign investment. In May this year, it published an article about Angola lamenting the economic wunderkind which has come a cropper. It stated that the government announced an end to fuel subsidies, which used to consume a whopping 4.5% of GDP. This generally sensible move, the subsidies distorted markets and encouraged smuggling, will hit the poor especially hard in an already highly unequal society. Unpacked, that sentence reveals a policy which hits the poor especially hard in an already highly unequal society is generally sensible. And it is, if you're a rich investor or local oligarch. The article does attempt to redeem itself by saying, while the elite enjoy European standards of living, the vast majority of Angolans struggle to attain the basics of life. It seems strange that despite this acknowledgement, they are pushing a policy which will make the lives of the vast majority of Angolans worse. The Economist also published a piece on the successes of the brutal mass-murdering Egyptian dictator Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. The article, The Law of Sisi, stated that Egypt's stock market delivered the best returns for investors in 2014. A fantastic year for investors, but according to Amnesty International, the previous year wasn't so great if you're a peaceful protester. In the 6 months towards the end of 2013, nearly 1,500 people died in political protests and violence, most at the hands of the Egyptian security services. Yet, The Economist went on to say that Sisi has consolidated power and ruthlessly crushed dissent. His firm rule and program of economic development have also attracted much needed investment. Freedoms must be sacrificed in the service of progress, the president argues. For now, at least, he may feel vindicated. Sometimes the mask slips even further. The winner of neoliberal think tank the Adam Smith Institute's Young Essayist competition was a piece titled Britain Needs More Slums. He wrote that the way to solve the country's housing crisis was sweeping deregulation, which was the only way to provide Britain with the slums it is crying out for. The vulnerable, people who do not contribute to the market in the way the financial press would like, are particularly likely to be attacked. A piece by journalists Mark J. Wachowski and Ross A. Marchand of the Wall Street Journal argued that it is too easy for people who have their disability benefit wrongly withdrawn to get it back. Their piece, Disability Claim Denied, Find the Right Judge, explains how administrative law judges uncritically approve most claims, with 9% of judges approving more than 90% of claims that landed on their desk. Judges who were deemed too generous had the number of cases they heard cut back. Yet disabled people were accused of playing adjudication roulette, filing and then withdrawing appeals in hope of drawing a generous judge, like they were involved in some sort of racket. Sometimes the financial press gets close to the truth about what kind of personality blossoms in the world of finance. Psychos on Wall Street, another piece by the Wall Street Journal, describes an article which claims that 1 in 10 people working on Wall Street are psychopaths. The writer says, "I have come to know many psychopaths, from Ponzi schemers to book-cooking corporate executives. They are always charming and narcissistic. They display wonderfully glib senses of humour and spin the truth like a roulette wheel. It is often difficult to argue that these people are indeed sick until the day they have to exchange their Armani suit for an orange jumpsuit." It quotes an ex-chief financial officer who states that to succeed on Wall Street, you've got to be a psychopath in one form or another. The thing is that the values promulgated by the business press, what is good for capital, for investors, is by definition psychopathic. The attention to factual accuracy, however, in the financial pages is second to none. Investors have less time for ideology. They just need to know how they will make more money. Censorship by omission helps to square the ruthless pursuit of profit. Capitalists investing in a brutal country will just not be told the full story of what is happening there, but be given a rose-tinted perspective. Burma's rush for economic growth, as this article in The Independent shows, is leaving its villagers homeless and jobless. Investors are piling in after being given assurances about political reforms. The article states that while there has been a historic rush by foreign investors to set up shop in the country, there is growing concern that Burma's economic metamorphosis has far outpaced its transition to democracy. Local activists say it is difficult to oppose the economic program in any respect, as many remain fearful of the government. Needless to say, the coverage for the financial pages report the story in a far different way. For them, this transition to an investor-friendly business climate is not going too fast, but too slow. The Wall Street Journal's article, "Myanmar's Mining Reform Stall Hindering Foreign Investment," laments the fact that changes designed to benefit foreign mining companies are taking longer than expected. No matter that the country is nowhere near a democracy and these decisions are often made by a ruling military still, despite the pretense of change. They quote, "The delayed law, considered a crucial precursor to foreign investors entering Myanmar's mining sector, highlights the continued difficulty for large companies hoping to extract the country's rich deposits of minerals and precious stones. Although reforms geared towards opening the country's once military-dominated economy to outsiders have been underway for 4 years, key components such as the mining law still remain in deadlock. But some financial outlets have a very reactionary political outlook, because it is often very conservative leaders rather than progressive ones who allow capital to run wild in their countries." In a Wall Street Journal op-ed written in July 2013, after the coup in Cairo, the writer claimed that Egyptians would be lucky if their new ruling generals turn out to be in the mold of Chile's Augusto Pinochet, who took over power amid chaos but hired free market reformers and midwifed a transition to democracy. The transition that the Wall Street Journal referred to was a coup against the democratic and constitutional president Salvador Allende and 17 years of fascist dictatorship. The business press also pushes cod science when it benefits the investors that read their pages. This silly piece by Forbes magazine about record cold and snow destroy global warming claims is based on the fact that stunning photos show New England lobster boats frozen in port, looking like they are stranded deep within the Arctic Circle. Another columnist says that global warming hype is mocked by the world's most powerful market signal, in which he blames the fact that the Chinese and Indians are in no mood to stop buying carbon-powered cars that they drive home to their air-conditioned houses and apartments. That's the reasoning for the fact that the destruction of the environment cannot be stopped. When they come up against popular movements focused on the financial system and its exploitative practices, the business press freak out. One example of this was the Occupy movement in the US and UK. The Wall Street Journal often looked like it was in a zoo when it covered the protesters. In this article, polling the Occupy Wall Street crowd, they say with certainty, our research shows clearly that the movement doesn't represent unemployed America and it's not ideologically diverse. Rather, it comprises an unrepresentative segment of the electorate. Despite the popularity of the cause across the country, the paper warned that, put simply, Democrats need to say they are with voters in the middle who want cooperation, conciliation and lower taxes, and they should work particularly hard to contrast their rhetoric with the extremes advocated by the Occupy Wall Street crowd. The reason that the financial press often shows the rotten core so nakedly is that when they are talking to each other, there is less need for the 1% to dress up their actions in the customary religion about shared prosperity and poverty reduction. In a 2007 article in the Multinational Business Review, Havina Dashwood explained that mining companies were caught in the mid-90s with a significant gap between societal expectations and their institutionalized practices. For the industry as a whole, the gap had widened so much that companies experienced a legitimacy crisis. The industry-wide obsession with sustainability and corporate social responsibility started around the turn of the millennium as mining companies started to feel the effects of their reputation in their ability to operate around the world and make money. That is not how it's presented outside of the financial press, however. There, it is dressed up as some great gift the mining companies are bestowing on grateful local communities. The business press is just one of the weapons in the arsenal of transnational capital to get its grip on every country in the world. But if you want to see how our world runs with a tinge less ideology, go there and see what sickness lies at the root of our civilization.